The debate over European defense independence has gained urgency with U.S. President Donald Trump's statement towards NATO. His criticism of NATO allies' defense spending and threats to reduce U.S. military support have amplified concerns about Europe's reliance on American security guarantees. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has been a leading advocate for European strategic autonomy, proposing initiatives like a common defense doctrine, budget, and intervention force. Macron has also emphasized France's nuclear deterrence as a cornerstone of European defense. However, challenges remain, including economic constraints, political divisions, and skepticism from some EU members. As Europe grapples with these issues, can it achieve true defense autonomy while maintaining transatlantic relations? Welcome to In Depth. As highlighted by the New York Times, European leaders are grappling with the challenge of securing support for Ukraine amid shifting U.S. foreign policy under Trump administration. Following a tense meeting between Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, where Trump threatened to halt U.S. backing unless Ukraine accepts a U.S. brokered peace deal, European leaders are concerned about the future of Ukraine and European security. While European nations have been increasing defense spending, they face challenges in becoming militarily independent from the United States, requiring significant investments and political will. Some European leaders, like France's Macron, are calling for faster action, while others, including Hungary, remain reluctant to increase support for Ukraine. Additionally, the incident with Trump has intensified the urgency for Europe to step up its efforts, potentially through enhanced defense capabilities and peacekeeping roles. However, unity among EU members remains a challenge, and leaders are also focused on how to maintain U.S. support while considering their own strategies for Ukraine. Amid Trump's foreign policy shifts, Europe is urgently seeking greater defense autonomy, focusing on strengthening defense industries and fostering collaboration to address growing security challenges.
Europe is actively pursuing an independent defense strategy in response to shifting U.S. policies and growing uncertainties over transatlantic ties.
Member states and, of course, for common European domains.
With Washington's remarkable shift, exemplified by sidelining European leaders in Russia-Ukraine negotiations, the continent is now prioritizing self-reliance. Leaders like France's Emmanuel Macron, a proponent of strategic autonomy, and Germany's Friedrich Merz are advocating for increased defense spending and enhanced military capabilities. This push is seen as long overdue, especially as the Russia-Ukraine war enters its fourth year and US support wavers. For instance, reports indicate that Europe's current combined force of 1.5 million personnel may need an additional 300,000 troops if the US withdraws its support. However, analysts from the Center for European Reform emphasize that simply increasing troop numbers is insufficient. Europe must also invest in critical capabilities currently reliant on the US, such as long-range missiles, aerial defense, surveillance, and transportation systems. Additionally, extending France's nuclear shield to other EU nations has been proposed as a way to bolster deterrence, with Macron expressing willingness to discuss a European nuclear defense framework. With the Russia-Ukraine war still taking place, the European Union has become more committed to deterrence and defense. It is scrambling to expand its defense industries, improve spending efficiency, and foster collaboration among member states. Facing multifaceted threats, European leaders recognize the urgent need for a coordinated strategy to strengthen military resources and ensure credible deterrence. This shift marks a pivotal moment in Europe's pursuit of strategic autonomy and resilience in an increasingly unstable geopolitical landscape.
For more analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Ashraf Singer, world politics analyst, and from Brussels by Mr. Nicholas Williams, former NATO official. Welcome to both of you, and I would start with Dr. Singer. Now, from a global political perspective, sir, how might Europe respond to this increasing uncertainty about U.S. support for Ukraine, and could this impact the international support for Ukraine?
It's really a huge shift from United States, and particularly from Donald Trump. Last meeting between Zelensky and Trump, it was really a big disaster, for the future or European, security, where Ukraine is part of Europe, and Europe considered, Ukraine is part of its security shield or security umbrella. So if United States now adopting, the Russian point of view, it's a pretty huge threat to the Europeans. What I can really see after that London meeting yesterday, where the number of European leaders were gathered together to decide what their response and their action to Trump policies, and that evolving, security landscape. Of course, several European countries have, voiced clearly to support Ukraine and give Europeans or countries more way of thinking about independency on their security. Of course, this is not really easy to be like independent than United States, because United States is still the big country that really is securing Europeans from any major threats. But it seems to be like Europe now is getting really scared from America, not other major threats, after, Trump declared that as, Greenland, gonna to conquer Greenland, from Denmark, and Denmark, got so anxiety, and, Macron and France, it was worth thinking, a number of European countries, they were thinking to send their troops there. It seems to me like Europe now needs really to invest more in their capabilities after that shift. Even Elon Musk, he declared that the United States should withdraw from NATO and UN. What I can really analyzing, or what I can really see clearly, that United States is really shaking the status quo, and this is really is driving Europe in more and create that level of anxiety. And of course, this is really shaking, that transatlantic relationship. And both of these sides, which is Europe and America, they need really to think rationally to manage the number of threats domestically and internationally.
Yes. Mr. Williams, how does the concept of European strategic autonomy align with NATO's role and goals, since you are a former NATO official?
I think it's totally incompatible. It's not incompatible politically. The Europeans have always wanted to have a degree of autonomy, and they've achieved a degree of autonomy. They have operations, mainly training operations, but operations now in Bosnia, in places like Africa, they've contributed. But the problem is NATO as a structure demands and willingly the nations accept the contribution of their forces to a NATO structure. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult for me to envisage what Europeans mean by strategic autonomy, because if they're contributing all their forces to collective defense against Russia through NATO, then they can't actually, unless they have an alternative structure, they cannot square their
And do they have an alternative structure, sir? Do they?
No, they don't have an alternative structure. Yes, potentially the EU, but the EU doesn't have a military structure as elaborate as NATO. And so NATO reform should be on the agenda, but the politicians in London yesterday were all thinking about working with America, trying to calm Trump down and work with him. So it's totally within the political and military framework of the Atlantic Alliance, as it traditionally has been for 80 years.
Yes, yes. Dr. Singer, what specific steps can the European Union take to achieve complete independence in defense?
This is a very crucial and a very good point, and based on what I read and trying, I was trying and I'm trying, to understand, that you shift from the next state. But there are, I think, five steps that Europe should really prepare to respond to that American, or Trump policies. Strengthening, the European Union defense capabilities. All European countries, they need really to make that significant, corporations and in terms of number of training. But unfortunately, Europe after World War II, they were mainly depending on the United States in joint training and in everything. They were. Actually, we can really say they were a free rider in the United States. But to make that shift in Europe, seems to me like they need really to come together, try to declare one voice of Europe, because, the situation in Ukraine is a very crucial for their security. It's not about making peace, but peace under one condition. Well, under what conditions? It's Russian conditions, American conditions. Second, the legacy of Charles de Gaulle, the creating a European army, and this will add the nuclear umbrella by France. So of course, UK and France, they declared many times they can really increase that umbrella to protect every country in Europe, as a nuclear, balance. Or nuclear weapons or nuclear umbrella, towards Russia or any countries can really scare Europe or threat Europe. Third, they need to invest in defense technologies, and they need really to increase the number of their billions of dollars, making that pool of making, that kind of investing in technology, strengthening NATO, Europeans pillar, and try to cooperating and make that cooperation with non-EU members. And this can really help Europeans to increase that level or that degree of security outside the territory of Europe.
Okay. Mr. Williams, how might the tense relations between the United States and Ukraine, especially following the last meeting, impact European security policies?
Well, you can see how panicked, I think the word is, the Europeans were, and this includes Turkey. Turkey was invited to this meeting on Sunday. They were panicked because they considered, or they feared, that Trump would do a deal with Russia over the heads of Ukraine and over and behind the backs of the Europeans. And that would really emphasize the weakness of the Europeans. And so they are desperately searching around for some sort of relevance in this process. And so they're proposing plans and reassurance forces to be deployed to Ukraine, but it's doubtful whether Putin will accept this.
Yes.
And so if Putin does not accept this deal, then the efforts of the Europeans will come to nothing.
Yes, and this is a possibility still. Now, Dr. Singer, given the growing concerns in Europe about security, do you believe that Europe is ready to significantly increase its military capabilities independently of the United States?
They can do that, definitely. The Europeans or countries, they have, strong capabilities in terms of making that balance even with Russia. If I'm talking about, like the GDP of Europe, it's of course like 10 times of Russia. If I'm talking about like the military or budget of the EU, it's 10 times or more than Russia. So of course, Europe can really make that balance, and they can really rely on themselves more than they will not be alone. They will not be alone, or Ukraine will not be alone if United States, give up of aiding Ukraine. So, but the question now, if the one NATO or one alliance, NATO, now it's facing, that kind of question about division or divided NATO. This is not good for United States, not good for Europe. So basically, it's changing this kind of policy of military burden or increasing, the European budget in terms of their spending. It's okay, but the way of paving or articulating this policy, between United States and Europe, it seems to me there is no kind of strong dialogue between Europe and United States. And United States really need really to increase that number of talk and conversations with Europeans over Ukraine.
Yes.
What the next for Europe's security, for European countries, is not only that United States can really, make that kind of talk and discussions, from the behind of Europeans' back. So they need really to do that, or both of them, that can really make kind of degree of stability in Europe and in global politics.
Okay. Mr. Williams, how might other European countries respond to France's call for greater defense independence?
Well, first of all, you have to decide, the Europeans have to decide whether they really want greater defense independence. They say they do, but their actions are ambiguous. They are always running to the United States to say, you have the military power that we need in order to defend us if everything goes wrong. And I don't think after 80 years of the NATO alliance, there is sufficient independence of thought to allow a break or at least a weakening of the transatlantic link. And this is the problem. It's not military, it's psychological. Europeans are psychologically dependent, or European politicians are psychologically dependent, as are the military, on the United States.
On the United States. Yes, sir, go ahead.
And for instance, this force of contemplating the British and the French to deploy in Ukraine, this force is a plan, but they're seeking the United States military cover in terms of air defense, in terms of intelligence, in terms of even logistics. And so the military always say to the politicians, we cannot do this without the United States. And I think that's the problem. The psychological dependence and the capability dependence on the United States, it will not be easily broken.
Dr. Singer, what are the potential geopolitical consequences if Europe succeeds in establishing a fully autonomous defense system?
Oh, this is for Europe. You mean Europe?
Yes.
Or you mean what?
Yes.
For Europe, oh wow, this is can really open like a new arms race, between Europe and the United States and Russia and China. So
And this
I
could
don't
widen the
think-
scope of conflict.
Yeah, yeah. This is coming, because this is kind of like that advantage that United States really taking that advantage to keep Europe in its side. So now, if Europe, it's really a new challenge of United States, mean that this is a new policy, new changing, a new global politics. So it seems to me like it's pretty hard that you can imagine there is like a split between Europe and United States. It seems to me like Donald Trump is shaking the system just to encourage Europe to increase their spending in military, encourage Europe to increase their security responsibilities with the United States. But of course, I can really read mind Trump that really Trump needs really to withdraw Russia from China.
Yes.
Aside or
Yes.
China alliance. So I can understand that is that United States was working hard long time ago to bring Russia to be part of Europe, not really away from Europe. But the question now about the Russians, they made their decision to be an independent country. They don't really like to be a part of Europe or a part of United States, influence. This is a different than mindset in America. They need really to bring Russia because
Yes.
the Russia GDP is pretty small compared to United States and compared to even the major countries like France or Germany. It's about like 5 trillions. Russia is about 2 trillions for GDP.
Yes,
So
I
it
get
seems to me
your
like-
point, Dr. Singer. Unfortunately, our time is up. So that was Dr. Ashraf Singer, world politics analyst, and Mr. Nicholas Williams, former NATO official. Thank you very much, both of you, for your valuable insights. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. I'm Halal Hamalawi. Thank you very much for joining us. And stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.